Good evening, everybody. I'll give everyone just a couple of minutes just to pop on and then we'll make a start. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're well. We'll just make a wee start. For the purposes of this evening, I am actually recording the session, so if you miss anything or want to do a wee rewatch, then you'll be more than welcome. I'll get that popped up onto our little YouTube channel. But I'm also more than happy to share the slides with you if that's easier for you, so we can send those out tomorrow. I will be sharing the sort of the intentions and purposes of this evening, so I'll just pop forward. If somebody could just confirm for me, just maybe a little hand wave or so on, if you're able to see the slides, just to confirm, so I'm not speaking into a void or anything like that. Brilliant, thank you so much, that's fantastic. So it makes sense to everybody. I've got memories of lockdown here of staring into a void with some of the classes who sometimes tell you if they were able to see your screen or not. So that's great, thank you so much. Okay, so the aims of this evening's session are as follows. This is a how-to guide to help best support your young person using their iPad to help with schoolwork. The iPads, as if you're new to them, you might have noticed there's lots and lots of things on there. We won't have time to go through absolutely everything that's on there. However, I will be able to give you the key things that we use in school and how to get the most out of them. iPad navigation, so how to kind of work your way around the iPads, some hints and tips for iPad use, and then a little question and answer session at the end. And what I would invite you to do is to, if you have any questions or thoughts along the way, please pop them in the chat, and then we can kind of filter them. And if there is anything that I haven't covered or you don't feel has been covered, I can go through the questions that have been placed in the chat. And if there's anything, again, if you wish to, please do just ask the question at the end of the session, not a problem. Okay, dokie. A little bit of context for the iPads as well. So some of you may be very well au fait with tech and technology in schools. This may be something that you're completely new to, and it's absolutely fine that we've kind of got a spectrum of knowledge and skills. If you've been in a primary school in Edinburgh City Council for the last year or two, then your child has probably had an iPad. And I'll go through the reasons why that's the case. So the iPads were well established at Royal High School, and actually we've had them for about 10 years now. When Mrs. Walker became head teacher, she was as a computing teacher with a computing background, she was very keen to sort of incorporate digital learning into sort of everyday life. And so we started off by issuing our iPads to our current S6 at the time and then kind of rolled them out for each year group. So by the time 2021 came around, and City of Edinburgh Council kind of took over the iPads, each pupil was issued with an empowered iPad instead of our own in-house iPads. However, what that did mean is that pupils were quite well established and teachers were quite well established in the use of iPads. So we were well practiced in using all of the features. And in fact, what we found was that with the new iPads, we actually kind of lost a lot of the features because apps and websites in the new iPads are controlled by City of Edinburgh Council. The reason for that is quite sound and quite sensible in that not all websites are secure and not all apps are secure either. And so in our previous iPads, we kind of had free reign to do what we want, which meant GDPR issues and so on and so forth. So everything that's on the iPad and is available on the iPad has been approved by City of Edinburgh Council. So you can kind of rest assured in a way that what they're looking at is within the council's verification. It's actually very, very difficult to get certain things unblocked on the iPads. So certain websites and so on, depending on what the content is or what the GDPR rules are, just won't be approved by the council. And on average, it kind of takes us about 6 months to have any kind of website or site approved. The digital team take a wee while to make sure that all of the protocols and all of the details are being met before they approve anything. So there's a bit of reassurance for you there in terms of kind of the safety and operationals around the iPads. You will also notice that we have a sort of an Apple crossed with Microsoft kind of hybrid. So Apple being the iPad itself, and with the iPads, that means that there are a lot of Apple apps already built into that. But you'll also notice that we have got all of the sort of the usual Office 365, if you're familiar with that, or Microsoft apps in there too. So we kind of run a little bit of a hybrid model in terms of the specific features of the iPad. And I'm going to go through what the key ones are that we use. Because there's so many of them, you'll find that some departments use some of the apps some of the time, some use them all of the time, but there are some commonalities that we have across our school which everyone is using, which keeps it nice and easy for us. So we created a digital policy, the Royal Hybrid Way, and kind of fortuitously when this was created, it was 2019, and we know what happened in March of 2020. This is one of the reasons why we're actually probably really, really good and kind of at the sort of the forefront of our digital education is because of COVID. Because all of our pupils at the time had their own iPads, it meant that we could, one, issue all of the materials for online learning in a way that was easily accessible by all. And then we got very, very skilled very, very quickly at using Teams for each of our classes. Because of this and because of the kind of the collaborative way that teachers operated during COVID, it meant that we established a policy where we have all faculties in the school using Teams for every class. That keeps things easy for the pupils. It also keeps things easy for teachers. And it means that if there's a teacher's absence, for instance, the curriculum leader can go in and make sure that all of the classes are running, for want of a better phrase, online and materials are posted there, so on and so forth. It meant that also in the second lockdown, when we got to sort of January of 2021, that we were able, and if you've got older children, you might remember this, able to deliver live lessons, a full timetable, a full suite of live lessons, with teaching being completely online, kind of as we would be, looking like this evening. Faculties also use the suite of apps available, which best helps facilitate the learning of young people. So looking at the iPads, like I said, there's lots and lots of various different apps. Some of them work better in some subjects than others. And so we give teachers a good bit of autonomy there to kind of explore and utilise what's available to the best effect for their young people. And of course, that means that we still use a wide range of non-digital and practical methods, which sits alongside iPads and other tech. So if you were concerned that the iPads are going to kind of wipe out traditional methods or, good old practicing handwriting or doing practical subjects, that is simply not the case. And these sit very much alongside and help enhance our learning in a variety of different ways. So when you go onto the iPad, you will see a sort of a plethora of various different apps. Like I say, they are Microsoft apps, they are Apple apps, and there are some other apps there that fit neither into Apple or Microsoft. For example, Sketchbook, some of you may be familiar with that already. These are all pre-approved, like I said, so they are completely safety approved, so you don't have to worry about data being stolen or anything like that. Your young person has their own Apple ID and they also have their own Office 365 login. If they lose or forget their O365 login or their Apple ID, not to worry about it. We can reset those here, and it's a matter of speaking to a teacher who will speak to the IT department who can do that for them. It's not a big deal. So if they get into a panic and they think, eek, I've lost this, I can't remember what my passwords are, we can reset that or we can provide them with that. However, once they've logged in into their O365, it remembers their details. So every time they go onto their iPad, anytime they click on an app, there's no need for them to re-input their passwords. It's all there and ready and set up and good to go for them. If in doubt, or even if you were actually accessing all their Microsoft stuff in a different way, for example, if you were using a laptop at home for whatever reason, you can actually log in on the front page of the school website. So if you go to the staff and pupils Office 365 login and they can put in their details there, it'll take them to their kind of full suite of O365 stuff. So the big one, like I said, Microsoft Teams. So our key conventions that we use are Microsoft Teams. Every faculty uses it, every subject uses it. Your pupils will have, or young people will have, every class set up as a team. Now, depending on the teacher and the subject, they will use it to a kind of a greater or lesser degree. But I'm going to take you through what that actually looks like potentially in practice so that you can work with your young person and you can help them navigate around. What we find is that young people are really good at this and they learn it really, really quickly. They can sometimes play a little bit dumb when they come to doing homework and there's like, I don't know where this is and so on and so forth. So I'm going to empower you hopefully with the knowledge that you need to help support your young person and also to say, okay, I know where your stuff is, I know where the homework is and so on and so forth. So Teams looks like this on an iPad. So on the left-hand side, you will see a list of the teams. The red is just blocking out identifiers because these are kind of a bit of a sample run here that we've got. So the names of pupils and other teachers are just blocked out here. So it's nothing to worry about just because it's on a public forum. So you can see the list of teams down the left-hand side, and we use a naming convention, which is Roy's subject, because this is an Edinburgh-wide thing. If it's just called S2 History, you can imagine how many S2 History classes there are and so on. So we put Roy at the start, the subject, and then it'll have the class details, possibly the year that goes with it. So it's easy to find. Teachers like to use little icons and so on just to make it a nice way to visually find their teams. When you click on a team, for example, this one here, I've got the Roy Digital Workshop team, and you'll see there's a connection to various little different tiles or apps at the top, and I'll talk you through those in a little minute. You will also see that they have channels which they can click on, and I'll show you what a channel looks like. There is one called General. There might be separate channels that teachers have set up, maybe with exemplars of work and so on. And then what I've kind of blocked out here is what are private channels. So your child might have a channel that just has their name on it, and I'll show you what that is and how it operates in a little moment or two. So you can use the tabs along the top to take you to class notebook. OneNote and assignments, and I'll go into more detail about those two things shortly. The list of channels here, though, is from a teacher perspective, and like I said, pupils will have their own channel, so their name should appear in the channel list. And the general channel is where teachers will post messages and work to the whole class. So this is what a general channel looks like. It kind of looks a little bit, if you're familiar with platforms like Facebook, it kind of looks like a kind of a rolling list of information, and it goes in date order. So this is an exemplar from a class that I had a couple of years ago, an advanced higher class, where anything that I post to them pops up into the general channel, and pupils like that. It's very pupil friendly. In fact, it works for us as well. So you can kind of see the timeline of events and work that you're posting and putting in place. So for example, I've posted an essay here in assignments, and if I post it in assignments, it appears on the general chat as well, so that they know when it is. I've posted a little instruction down here, and what I do is I @ the whole team, so teachers will do that as well. You can @ specific pupils as well if you want to grab their attention, and that will send a little notification to them that there's something new that's been posted in the general chat. You might want to pop along and see what that is. That isn't something that we got very used to using during COVID, but we brought forward as kind of good everyday practice within the classroom. So that means that pupils have got the information in front of them. Here's what the task is, or here's what the chat is, or here's what the assignment is for today. And that's also really beneficial for anyone who, for whatever reason, isn't there that day, or is maybe working from home, or is maybe at music lesson, needs to catch up, so on and so forth. Every time a teacher posts a file then as well, so if there's a Word document, for example, or a PowerPoint, there is a tab in general that says files. So if your young person says, I don't know where the work is, I don't have it, check in the files section because it's likely to be there. It's automatic. So teachers don't have to do things twice. They don't post in the general channel and then have to post again on files. Microsoft has very cleverly gone, if you post it into general, I'll take the file and I'll put it into the folder for you. This one here is probably a bad example. It's a little bit disorganized, but you get the idea. And what teachers will do will categorize, and they'll organize their file section a little bit better here. And then OneNote in class notebook. So you might hear your young person saying that this is in Teams or it's on my OneNote. They are interlinked. So teachers, when they set up a Teams page, they create a class notebook at the same time. So if the young person clicks on their class notebook, and they will know how to do this, it will take them to essentially what is an electronic jotter. Some teachers use this to sort of a great extent. Some teachers not so much. We leave that autonomy up to them because what works in one subject might not work in another. And the one main thing that we all use though is Teams, because that keeps things nice and simple for the pupils. If we want a better phrase, this is an electronic jotter. And down the left-hand side, again, the red is just blocking out previous pupils' names. What you'll see is basically I've got sections part on the left-hand side, and then pages just to the right of that. And if I've clicked on that one here, which says what's the most important method of control, it throws up that page and then shows me the pupils' work on there. So when pupils click on the class notebook, it takes them to here. Each pupil has a tab, and within the tab there are different sections. Within each sections there are pages, and the nice thing about the pages is that those are unique and private to that pupil. So even if I've posted work on that page, they can literally scribble all over it because that's their kind of unique doorway into their own electronic jotter. It also means that they can edit, change anything that's on there, or upload their own work, which means that essentially they've got a portable jotter that goes everywhere with them. And again, class notebook, you can insert things like Word docs, you can insert PowerPoints, you can insert things like audio feedback, which is absolutely invaluable for our pupils. And it means that they are carrying all of the information that they need for their lessons, all of their learning for the year, which is really important when they get to the senior phase. That's in that iPad at all times. What's really nice as well is it's not just in the iPad, it's actually in the cloud. So should the iPad get, stomped upon, broken, whatever, it doesn't matter because it's all stored from the O365 stuff online, so they can access it again. If you're familiar with the Microsoft apps, I'm going to show you a little demo of one in a moment or two. You will see that actually it's got the same functionality as things like Word docs have. So we've got the home page where you can change things like your fonts, you can do your highlighting and so on. We've got insert for where you can insert documents. We've got the draw facility, and also we've got audio buttons here. So one thing that I like doing and other teachers like doing is providing audio feedback for your pupils. They're more likely to listen to it because when we write it, they don't like it and they don't pay any attention to it, but they will listen to it. And quite often what we ask them to do is listen to it and then articulate back to us. What is it we've said is your strengths here, and what are your next steps? Show your understanding in terms of your next steps. There is a nice little feature within View, which I'm going to show you shortly as well, which will hopefully help you to help your young people access some of their learning. The big one then. So the one that everybody asks for is, what about homework? How can I help them find their homework? How can I help them organise their homework? So I've had a bit of a think about it, and I've come up with, actually, I kind of stole it from my daughter's school. My daughter also goes to school in Edinburgh. She is also in S1. And I just noticed that she, on her iPad, the homeworks were appearing on assignments, which makes it really simple and really easy for me to find and for me to support her. And the way that you do that is when you're in Teams, on the left-hand side, there is a little icon which says assignments. And if you press assignments, it tells you every single one which is there and the date that it's due on. Now, the tricky thing with that is that teachers often use assignments as well to issue classwork and so on and so forth. It's not homework. So to get around that issue, what I've asked teachers to do, and what I've got a wee example of here, which one of my history teachers has done really nicely, is just put the word homework at the start of something that is homework. Okay, I can see a wee question popping up there saying that teachers do not use this. This is something that they are going to use from this point onwards. So it was to draw that in, and this is what I've said here. So I'm going to ask all teachers to record homework in assignments, regardless of whether it is due to be turned in on assignments or on Teams. So whether it is whether it's a practical homework task or whether it's digital, it doesn't really matter. It should be recorded on Teams so that you and your young person can see them all in the one place, so they know when the deadlines are and they can click on the assignment itself to find out what the description is. However, the turn-in may look different depending on what the actual homework task is. So this is what I've said here. Please note, homework can still take a number of different formats, and the turn-in will not always be required on Teams. For example, a homework item may be a creative piece like a poster, which needs to be created on paper and then physically submitted to the teacher. Okay, if you are submitting on Teams, here is the way to do it and way to help your young person. So this is from a student point of view. So I have got this as a student here, and this is their homework. This is the description of the homework. Sometimes that might have other attachments and so on. There is a little button here where you can attach whatever file it is. And then once that's attached, you go to the top right-hand corner where it says hand in and you click it. And Microsoft have added a little feature where you get a little congratulations message, something does a little dance, and so you know that it's been handed in. It's actually quite simple and quite straightforward, but I totally understand when you're not used to it. You're like, where is this? How do I find this? So here's the visual. You attach whatever document it is here, and then you press hand in if that is the requirement of the homework. And this is what it looks like on the teacher's end. So if I was asking for a piece of homework, this is actually a screenshot from a piece of work on OneNote. The person has handed it in, and this is what it looks like at the teacher's side. So it can be viewed by me, I can give feedback, and it can be returned by the teacher. If it's a Word doc, it can be downloaded, it can be written on or adjusted and then re-uploaded. And then when I hit return here, it throws it back to the pupil and they get the little box with the feedback in it. There is also a little camera function on here as well, so you can actually record feedback, so you can do live feedback like I'm presenting to you now. Or if the teacher doesn't want their face all over Teams, what they can do is they can just turn the camera off and it comes back as a verbal feedback. And again, that stores it there essentially for the pupil to access and re-access whenever they want, which is super useful for when it comes to things like revision. Okay, so and the other thing I mentioned is that they might have their own channel set up on Teams. Not all classes do this, and I had a good discussion today with our drama and music department who said that just in terms of how they operate with pupils, in terms of their kind of live feedback, and they tend to do group feedback, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would benefit from having a private channel. However, many of the was that one about the presentation not moving? I have moved it on. Can anyone let me know if it is moving on? Just give me a wee raise of hand. Is it not moving on? You're still seeing assignments. Okie dokie. Let me go back a minute. Is it moving on now? No. Hold on a little moment. Still on point 13. Right, okay, I'm going to reload it. Is it moving on now? Can people see it? Yes, brilliant, excellent. So that's us back at the assignments page there. Let me just navigate forward a little bit. No, somebody's saying no. What I might do is I might just share it instead. I'll go to my window. If I do it this way, are people able to see it if I do this? Is that a yes? Hopefully that's a yes. I think I'm just experiencing some slow internet up here. Yeah, I've got the error message. I think that's the problem. Just give me a wee second and we'll kind of tune back in. Okay, hopefully you can still see. Could somebody just give me a wave to say that they can still see? That would be great. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And again, please do just interrupt or just give me a wee shout out. I've had to change formats slightly here just to get it to work. So turn on your mic and give me a shout if it stops moving for people. Okay. So we're submitting on Teams, and then here's what it looks like when it's submitted to the teacher. And like I said, what you can actually do is the teacher can enter feedback, and then I can return it to the pupil so they can see what I've written, or I can record that feedback as well, and they will receive that as either a little film of me talking, well, not this one, but definitely an audio. Or indeed, I can actually provide an attachment as feedback if that's the case. So, like I said, in many classes, people have private channels on their iPads. Not all classes, but many people are beginning to use this feature, and it's a really, really positive feature, which I'm encouraging teachers to utilise. It means that they can go into their own little channel, and it looks like this little run through that we've got here. You can have your own files added, and you have your own posts. And as you can see from the exemplars here, this teacher has uploaded a bespoke video which has a demonstration of how to use Sketchbook for the work that they were doing. They've got some feedback on their work and next steps provided so that they can continue their work in a bespoke manner. And then you can see just below that the pupil themselves has actually responded to the teacher and said, here's my next piece of work, here's my next thing, can you have a look at it for me? What we're finding is that private channels provides a really, really useful way for teachers to kind of have that one-on-one conversation with pupils in a digital manner. It records obviously the in effect the conversation that they're having, so they can go back over their next steps and their requirements. And it allows us also to provide differentiated work for any pupils that require it. Now, I'm going to show you a wee app called Immersive Reader here. So Immersive Reader is a great little addition to Microsoft, all of the Microsoft apps. And like I said, you can actually get them on all of the Microsoft apps that we use. And what it does is it allows pupils to have the information that's on their page read out to them. So if you have a young person that's maybe struggling to read stuff off of the iPad for whatever reason, they can use Immersive Reader and they can pick a voice and it will read it to them. They can also change the font that they're using to suit their reading needs much better. For example, Comic Sans is always a really good one. If your young person has dyslexia, for example, it's really user friendly. They can also add little things in like coloured overlays as well to take the kind of the white glare of the screen away. And it's a really nice little feature. So you find this in each of the Microsoft apps by going to View. So this is just a little screenshot from a Word document, and you go to the View tab, and in the View tab, it will have this little app here, or this little icon, Immersive Reader. When you click on Immersive Reader, it starts to change what you have on the screen. You can see here that I've used some of the features to change my background to pink. It's changed my writing, it's spaced it out a little bit more. And the little icons that I've got up here on the right-hand side means that I can hit play and I can actually choose the voice that I want. I can choose a female voice or a male voice, so it's hopefully reflective on what they would prefer, and it will read that information to me. Also, it appears in Teams. Like I said, it appears on each of the Microsoft apps. It appears on each of the Microsoft apps. So you can actually have your messages in Teams read out to you. You can have any of the information on your OneNote read out to you. It's there, it's the same thing each time, so that the young person knows what to do and how to use it. Another key app that we use, I want to point out, especially if you are if your young person is EAL, English as an Additional Language, is Microsoft Translator. Microsoft Translator is a really great addition to our iPads, and what it does is it helps break language barriers. You can do various different things with it, and I've just got a wee snapshot on the top right hand side. So what I've done there is I had written "Hello, my name is" in my little notebook, and snapshotted it, and Translator has translated it into Spanish for me. If there's any Spanish people here, you might say, it's not good Spanish, but you get the idea. You can do lots of various different things with it, and actually the really nice thing, especially if you've got somebody who perhaps is new and immersing themselves in the English language, but maybe doesn't have the confidence level yet to kind of participate fully, you can actually switch the translator app onto your iPad, press the microphone, and it will record and give you a live translation of what the teacher is saying. If you're watching a film, what the film's saying, so on and so forth. This is a really invaluable one for us. And something that's quite often overlooked, this app is on your young people's iPads as well, and it's called OneDrive, and it's not something that's overly exciting, but it's a really, really overlooked one in terms of its importance. It's so essential because essentially it's the online storage system. You can save documents to your iPad, but I would discourage you from doing that for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. If your iPad's lost or broken, so on and so forth, then anything that's on the iPad will go with it. However, if it's stored in the cloud in our online system, then it means that that is accessible again once the iPad has been repaired or restored. And so I would encourage your young people, if they're doing homework at home or doing anything at home and school, to make sure it goes into their OneDrive. And they should know that. So, like I said earlier, when you go pop onto your iPad, you'll see a plethora of different apps. All of them have their merits. All of them are used to a greater or lesser extent by our teachers, depending on the subject. But the key app that is used by every single person in the school is Microsoft Teams. Every class will have a team. Your young people have that all set up. On the back of that and linked to that is OneNote or Class Notebook. It's the app is OneNote, but it's called Class Notebook in Teams. And that is their own little personalized electronic jotter where they will do and can do various different pieces of work. The maths department, for example, essentially have their entire courses placed onto OneNote and linked to Teams. And actually, it's pretty impressive. They've got lots of things like the classwork, but also extension tasks, and they've even got the answers so the pupils can kind of check their work and make progress in that way. So I've got a few top tips for you as well to kind of, help you and help your young people too. So this seems like a bit of an obvious one, but the number of pupils that come in without this ready and good to go can sometimes be a bit of an issue. We do have chargers around school. I'll tell you what, in terms of the hottest property in the school are iPad chargers and cables. I've had about 3 nicks from my office because people just value them so much because it obviously keeps you going. The way to get around that problem is make sure you've got your iPad charged overnight so it's ready for learning each day. If there are any issues with your iPad itself, for example, if it breaks, please don't get your young person just to hold on to it. If you notice that there's a crack in the screen or a wee smash or anything else that goes wrong with it, please come and let us know straight away so that we can get it repaired, hopefully at the lowest possible cost for you, before it goes too far. Broken iPads can be taken to the office. If the young person takes it to the office, then they'll go through the procedures there. If you've been unfortunate enough to have an iPad break, please don't worry. We do experience it. We know that these are devices that are ostensibly made of glass, and accidents do happen. As per the empowerment agreement, you are responsible for the iPad and the good care of the iPad. And if you are sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I'm really worried my young person is going to break this, please do get in contact with me, and we have kind of extra reinforced cases that are available to purchase through parent pay. So if you want to kind of preempt any potential breaks or so on, do get in contact with me and I can point you in the direction of buying one of those. If you do experience a break and experience a charge, there is a procedure to go through, which has been explained to you in the Empowered Agreement that was passed out to you at the beginning of the year. But if you need a reminder or are worried about that at all, please just let me know. If there's an issue with logging in or any other software issue, young people can notify a teacher who will in turn let the IT team know. Or they can also ask our digital dynamos. We've got a group of digital savvy pupils who station themselves in the grubby each Monday lunchtime, who help resolve any minor issues such as logging in. And on the back of that, I will say that our digital dynamos are going to be present at our S1 Parents' Evening coming up on the 29th of November. So if you are a parent of an S1 pupil and think, oh, I'd really like to kind of see iPads up close, see Teams demo in action, please do come along. They would be delighted to kind of show you and navigate your way around the iPads. Also, something that can help with iPads sort of general use is checking them for updates, and this can sometimes help resolve running issues. So when they run into problems with maybe iPad apps not running quite as well as they should, things look are a little bit more difficult than they used to be. Please head towards the general button in settings and look at the software updates. And actually, you can see that mine's today actually needs an update, and I can upgrade to OS 17. Apple will update their programming system on quite a regular basis. And what we tend to find is when teachers and pupils complain that something's not working, it's because an update hasn't been run. Now, your iPads are actually set up to do these automatically. If it's not, there is a little tab above where the software update information is, and you can see that mine's is switched to on here. If it's switched off, pop that to on and it should do it automatically. And then that's kind of our little whistle-stop tour of the iPads. And I know there's been a few questions kind of popped up into the chat. So I'll come back on just now and see if there is anything that anyone wants to ask on the back of what we've talked about here. Like I say, I will make this recording available, and I'll send out the slides as well, so that you can access this and go over it again if you need to. So let me just a little run through of some of the questions here. I'm just going to check with my colleague. Is Kate Fraser in here?
I am. Good evening.
Thank you. Hi. I was just going to navigate our way through the questions, Kate, and see if there's anything that you have noticed that hasn't been covered yet.
Yeah. So there was a question about iPad cases with keyboards that can be bought. That isn't set as standard, but we work very closely with our support for learning department. So if your young person, if it's identified actually having a keyboard would be helpful for their ASN need, it's something we can negotiate with Mrs. Hislop in support for learning. So it's worth contacting support for learning.
What I will say, I was going to say on the back of the keyboards thing, if it's something that we don't provide and your young person may not be entitled to, you are completely at liberty to go and buy your own, from, well-known online sources named after famous rivers, do very cheap ones that work and are compatible with the iPads. It won't alter anything in the iPad. You're fine to use that. Same with the little stylos or, Apple Pencils. Apple Pencils themselves can be really expensive. If that's something your young person likes using, you can actually procure, very cheaply versions of those that will be compatible and work with your iPads at a very low cost. If that's something that you prefer to use, it's not a problem.
Brilliant. And then there's a question about have S1s been taught how to do this? It's similar to primary, but not identical. The way that we roll out this is we ask subject teachers to be showing their young people within their subjects, because yes, Teams is the main focal point of doing it, but just from a context specific point of view, to actually be doing it within their subjects themselves. So their subject teachers should be talking them through their processes and how to access all of their work. And we are working with staff on that. Maxine, do you have anything to add into that in terms of that training? I mean, it's very much been focused in a context specific setting, hasn't it?
I think so. And I think that there's always going to be differences between primary school and high school, just because of the nature of the way that primary school has operated and the way the high school operated. We actually run very, very closely with our learning community, so we've got a lot of commonality there, and I do appreciate there's differences. That's why we've got our policy of the Royal Hybrids base, so that teachers can use those, and that's why we've got Teams as kind of our main convention, with the autonomy that teachers can play around with the other apps to kind of greater or lesser effect. And in terms of how the S1s are taught to use them, there is that commonality, and I do appreciate sometimes it can be a little bit different, but I think that just allows teachers to have that, autonomy within the classroom that they need to access their learning in a specific way. There's a question here right at the very beginning which said, when do the children that didn't get the new iPads expect to receive them? We are just waiting on them being delivered from the digital team. We appreciate that you haven't got the 8th generation ones. What I want to reassure you is, and I hope that Mrs. Reid did reassure you, that those are still empowered iPads. They are slightly older, but they will still run all of the same things, hopefully we'll get the new ones out to you as soon as we possibly can.
Great. There's another question there. When will S1 be getting their first homework? We do set homework tasks via the assignment feature on the Teams. So that is where homework will be delivered. We are very much research driven with regards homework at the school, in that, research, particularly lower down the school, there isn't a strong connection between research and between homework rather, and improved attainment. And sometimes from an equity point of view, there can be challenges there. So when homework is being set, we really encourage staff to make sure that it's meaningful, often that it's rooted in retrieval practice, which is really one of the key strategies that embeds learning. So often it's a lot of, and this is why iPads one of the many reasons why iPads are brilliant in terms of, you know, the ways in which homework can be set through things like Padlet and quizzes to be retrieving knowledge, because that, from an evidence-based point of view, that is a key way that young people are learning. But from your point of view, you can keep an overview of homework that has been set on the iPad by asking your young person to show them the assignments section on their Teams, because that highlights the assignments that have been set. It highlights any that haven't been submitted, when their dates are due. So it's another really useful way for families to be supporting their young person in terms of the learning that is going on. Another question there, does it look the same on a PC? In terms of accessing Teams, it looks the same on a PC. Maxine, you look like you're about to come in there.
So it kind of does, and it's kind of got a few differences, but it's ostensibly the same, more or less. If you're okay with one of them, you'll be okay with, you'll be okay with the other, and if you're using Teams. And there was a wee question here as well. It said, does homework have to be created within Teams or OneNote, or can it be uploaded from a document created locally on a PC? Absolutely. So you can access Teams on your PC. You can access all of the Microsoft documents from your PC as well. All you need to do is go to the Royal High website that I showed you earlier and click the O365 login, and it will give you all the suite of apps for Microsoft, so you can create your documents there, and then you can upload them separately to Teams. That's not a problem at all.
And then another question there about naming convention. Is there a difference between files named as ROY and RHS? No, there isn't. We are encouraging staff to use the ROY prefix, so we can be reminding staff of that. But ROY and RHS will be, they're both pertaining to the school, so they will both be just a slightly difference in terms of that convention that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll send a dual coding reminder, Mrs. Fraser.
Yes.
It should be Roy. And like I said earlier, it's just a differential, so that something like S2 English doesn't get lost in amongst the hundreds and hundreds of S2 English classes that are set up across the city. Is there any other questions for us this evening? I'm hoping that the silence is good. Oh, one more. Much of the presentations loaded by the subjects seem to be different in different files, which makes it quite difficult to navigate and pull all information together on one topic. Once children get to exam years, will the teacher pull all the information together to make it easier to navigate all of the class teaching? Do you mean in the exemplar that I gave you, where it was the files on Teams? Or do you just mean as an observation in general that you've noticed that it's kind of, there's a lot of information? Teachers are actually
I can probably talk to it a bit easier.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Trying to put it into like a sentence was hard. I've just noticed whenever I go in, I look in some of the work. So say there's just one topic that's being taught, and it's been loaded in about 5 or 6 or 7 different individual presentations. And you have to go into each one to pull it up to find a couple of sentences and a picture. And so you're going into 5 different presentations to find out the information for that one topic. And I just imagine once you get to exam years, it's quite difficult to navigate all of that for all of the different all the different topics for all the different subjects. I was just wondering, how does that kind of information get pulled together to make it a little bit easier to navigate the whole course within an individual subject for revision?
It's a good question, and I think the answer would be that it's going to look different to every subject and possibly every teacher as well. So we hopefully model good practice with our teachers and encourage them to do it in an organised way. That's where OneNote actually comes in really, really handy. I know that Mrs. Fraser and I used to do simple things like number our sections and then number what we wanted them to follow in which order, so that they could kind of work their way through the wealth of information. If there are any concerns with that, you could let us know, certainly, and we can kind of talk to CLs about helping their teachers with organising notes and things like that. I don't want to put out a diktat to teachers, because I need them to have the autonomy that fits for their subject. But if it is looking a bit wildly and a bit difficult to navigate for your young person, then absolutely do get in contact, and we can help them probably organise that as well. Not a problem. One thing that I will say is when they get to the senior years, the question I always ask whenever we're asked anything about the sort of the virtues of iPads and so on, there's an easy tester question, which is to ask a senior level pupil, what would happen if I took your iPad away before the exam revision? And the look of sheer and utter terror and horror on their face says it all, that these are a real boon to them. You know, in days gone by, sort of 10 years ago, I would be handing out photocopied packs like this for revision. That's all gone because every single thing is on the iPads. For them, they get very, very good and very adept at knowing where things is, and being able to work with whatever, you know, sort of system the teacher has going in terms of filing and storing information. They are completely invaluable to them, and it's also a really ace teaching tool as well, in terms of if somebody's missed a lesson, you can pop it in their private channel, or they can easily access what's been missed. And you know, if it should happen that your young person has a long-term absence, for example, we've got teachers that can fully teach courses essentially through a back and forward through Teams and through the iPads. So it's a really good resource. But like I said, it's a hybrid model. It does sit alongside sort of more what you would regard as being more traditional methods of teaching. We still need them to be able to write for exams. We still need to be doing practical, elements in science and PE, so on and so forth. So all of the traditional things haven't gone out the window. We just use this to really, really boost and as a real boon to what we're doing in the classroom, and be really creative with it as well. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and it was a tech event for aimed at young women. And the people who were presenting on that day said that there are currently 17,000 unfilled tech positions in Scotland in terms of the job market, which is a really astonishing figure. So I think we're actually doing our young people a real service and kind of upskilling them in all their digital skills at this stage, so that it's a kind of a smooth segue into the world of further education or work. And I think that's something that we're beginning to do here. So the more they work with them and the more tools that we can kind of offer them in this area, the better it's going to be. And I think somebody at that meeting also said something that really resonated with me, and they said that a lot of the sort of what you would think of as more sort of traditional companies, so say like a clothing line or a clothing company like or sports company like Nike. Nike aren't really a clothing brand anymore. Nike are a tech brand that happen to sell clothing, and I think that's very true when you apply that kind of across the board. If you think of the way that the way that we kind of work and consume things now has completely changed. So hopefully we're getting those skills in early, and those, what we're doing now with your young people, if you're in S1, might look completely different by the time we get tested, because we're always responsive to any of the changes and upskilling ourselves when it's out there. Can you print off the homework assignments and teaching materials? Yeah, you can. If you want to, Neil, if you want to print that off at home, you can do. Again, just log onto your PC, your laptop, if that's connected to a printer. If your young person is somebody who requires that to be printed off for them, then that's an arrangement that can be made in school. That is absolutely not a problem. Teacher can make that happen. Any other questions before we close for this evening? Lovely. If there is an additional question or anything that pops into your heads kind of, later on this evening or tomorrow, please don't hesitate to get in contact. But I'll send out the re-recording and the slides. If not tomorrow, then certainly early on next week. Thanks for coming.